relentless hostilities and repeated evacuation orders continue to constrain aid operations that are already hampered by access constraints, fuel shortages, and other challenges. Our humanitarian colleagues tell us that parts of the Salah ad-Din Road, a crucial passage for humanitarian missions, were included in the latest evacuation orders by the Israeli authorities over the weekend for parts of the Dalbala governorate. This has made it nearly impossible for aid workers to move along this key route. The coastal road is not a viable alternative. Beaches along this route are now crowded with makeshift shelters for displaced people. As a result, convoy movements along the coastal road are extremely slow, and critical supplies and services such as water trucking are not reaching people in need at anywhere near the scale required. Back here this morning, Stephanie Corey, the Deputy Special Representative for the Secretary General for Political Affairs and acting head of the mission, briefed the Council on the situation in Libya. She warned that over the past 2 months, the situation in the country has deteriorated quite rapidly in terms of political, economic, and national stability. Security stability. Ms. Corey said the unilateral acts by Libyan political, military, and security actors have increased tensions, have further entrenched institutional and political divisions, and have complicated efforts for a negotiated political solution. In the midst of this, she said the UN mission, along with member states, have actively worked to de-escalate the current situation. Ms. Corey noted that local elections are moving forward and are expected to take place in mid-October 2024, adding that the High National Election Commission, with the support of the UN mission, is undertaking the necessary steps. Her full remarks are shared with you. And our special envoy for Myanmar, Julie Bishop, is in Beijing today and tomorrow to meet with the Foreign Minister of China, Wang Yi, as well as the Chinese Special Envoy for Asian Affairs, Deng Xijun. This comes as Ms. Bishop continues to focus on responding to the crisis in Myanmar through regional unity, international coherence, and a Myanmar-led inclusive process in the interest of people of Myanmar. The mission to China follows the special envoy's recent visit to New York headquarters in June, and then her regional tour of the her regional tour to ASEAN countries. The tour including engagements with the foreign ministers of Indonesia, the Lao People's Democratic Republic, Malaysia, and Thailand. Also during that tour, the special envoy met with the incoming ASEAN chair, and that is Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim, and the current ASEAN special envoy to Myanmar, Alungkeo Kitikun. Turning to Bangladesh, I'd been getting some questions about a letter sent by the Secretary General. I can tell you that Mr. Guterres has written a congratulatory letter to Mohammed Yunus, the new chief advisor of the interim government of the People's Republic of Bangladesh. In the letter, the Secretary General welcomes efforts to restore calm and organize parliamentary elections in Bangladesh. He says that it is his hope that the Yunus government, the Secretary General says it is his hope that the Yunus government will take an inclusive approach, including by considering the voices of young people as well as women, and also those of minority and indigenous communities. Mr. Guterres adds that he counts on the interim government of Bangladesh to ensure the full protection of all citizens, in particular of minorities. The Secretary General has also strongly urged Mr. Yunus to ensure the well-being of the Rohingya refugees, especially in view of the deteriorating situation in Myanmar. And turning to Ukraine, the Humanitarian Coordinator in Ukraine for the UN, Matthias Schmale, condemned an overnight attack in the Donetsk region in the eastern part of the country where a transit center for displaced people was damaged. The site in Pokrovsk town was sheltering people who had fled earlier hostilities. Mr. Schmal stressed that civilians and civilian infrastructure, including humanitarian facilities, are protected under international humanitarian law. The UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs says that escalating hostilities in the Donetsk region continue to kill and injure civilians and drive displacement. Our humanitarian partners on the ground say that deadly strikes over the past week in Pokrovsk and the towns of Mirnorod and Toretsk have damaged homes and schools. Aid workers in Myanmar responded by delivering emergency materials and providing psychosocial support to impacted people. Our humanitarian colleagues note that civilians, including humanitarian workers, are facing daily threats to their safety and hostilities in Ukraine. And our colleague from the peacekeeping mission in the Democratic Republic of the Congo have updated us on ongoing efforts to protect civilians in the eastern part of the country. Recently, peacekeepers deployed to Guinea in North Kivu in response to alerts about the Zaire armed group that surrounded the Congolese National Police office in the area. UN peacekeepers deterred the Zaire armed group fighters in close collaboration with the Congolese armed forces, prompting the Zaire fighters to withdraw. MONUSCO also deployed a patrol to the Kwe mining site near Bunia in Ituri province after elements from the Codeco armed group attempted to launch an attack. Meanwhile, the mission informs about the continued use of disinformation, misinformation, and hate speech, especially in the context of the M23 rebellion in North Kivu, which is threatening the social cohesion and security in the area. In response, MONUSCO recently organized a forum of about 100 local journalists and influencers, including in Goma, to promote responsible reporting that supports peace and stability in the region. Speaking of peace and stability, Edie.
Thank you, Steph. At the beginning, you talked about the difficulties in getting aid through because of the evacuation orders. Can we get some specific figures on what is getting through and how that compares with the past?
Yes, it's more than a valid question. We've asked our colleagues at OCHA for an update on kind of volumes, trucks, and all those kinds of data points.
Including fuel?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Secondly, since the Security Council discussed Libya today, can you give us an update on a replacement for the former SRSG, Mr. Bachelet?
I can give you an update, which is that the process is ongoing.
Last time before Mr. Bachelet took the job, it took a year. Are we expecting a similar wait now?
Well, listen, I think it's no secret that head of the UN mission in Libya is rather a challenging job. It takes the time that it takes to find the right candidate, that will go through the process through which any candidate to be person to be SRSG has to go through, which involves a lot of consultation. Deji, and then Benny.
What about another selection, the USG for humanitarian work? Is that also in progress?
So much is in progress.
It's been quite some time in progress.
It is. I know it's been some time in progress, but obviously the process is continuing, and as soon as we have something to share with you, we will. But it needs, I shouldn't need to remind, but I will, that Joyce Masuya is the acting and very engaged head of the Office of the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, and the department is being led. It's not as if it had no leadership. Another
forgotten issue, maybe, the Yemen tanker. What do you have any update on the Yemen?
Nothing.
It's still there?
It's still there, and nothing.
Would that be also a risk, because now we know the situation in Red Sea?
Of course it's a risk. Of course it's a risk. I mean, and we see the ongoing tensions in Yemen, and it puts a lot, there continues
but
to be.
But to place that tanker there, it's not according to what the schedule said by UNDP. I mean, if I remember correctly, last year. So what's going?
Well, the situation.
Wrong?
I mean, as you very well know, the situation in and around Yemen, while has improved in some areas, in others it has not. Ben Yemen.
Regrettably, it won't be about progress. Some of us are not progressive.
Benny, I never mistook you for a progressive person. But let's not regress, yes.
So I know there's going to be a briefing about the humanitarian situation in Lebanon. Regrettably, I can't make it because of previous. The question I have is there are up to 80,000 Israelis who have been evacuated from their homes in northern Israel because of a war that started from Lebanon. My question is there a plan to have a briefing on that?
Well, let me be clear. I think, if I'm mistaken, I no doubt you will correct me, Benny. But every time I speak about the humanitarian situation along the Blue Line, make it a point to talk about the tens of thousands of people who've been displaced from the northern side of the Blue Line in Lebanon and from the southern side in Israel. Civilians are being impacted. They're being uprooted. A number of them have been killed. This is impacting civilians on both sides of the Blue Line. We have a humanitarian operation in Lebanon. We do not have one in Israel. Should the Israeli government request humanitarian assistance from the UN, as would any other government request it, we would be happy to provide it. But we are fully aware of the humanitarian impact on the Israeli end as well as on the Lebanese end.
And when you say this, you mean the war that was started on October 8 by Hezbollah?
The situation along the Blue Line, the non-implementation of Security Council Resolution 1701 has been going on for quite some time. Yes, sir, go ahead.
Thank you so much, Steph. I'm wondering if you have any updates on Kursk region in Russia.
No update. We're continuing, obviously continuing to follow the situation with concern, including the impact on civilians living in the area.
Can I have one more?
Yes, of course.
Yesterday you said that Houthis returned the office in Sana'a, but originally in early August they also seized vehicles. So what happened to the vehicles?
I don't think the vehicles have been returned, but I will double check. Okay. Yes, Vladimir.
The same subject, I think. We see that the Russian crisis is growing as the war has returned home to Russia. Russia has demanded UN condemnation of Ukraine, but doesn't allow UN representatives into Kursk region. The Russian foreign minister called the request of the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights to visit the region another performance. Someone, Maria Zakharova, claims that the High Commissioner ignores Russia's complaints about Ukraine. What's your opinion about that?
Look, I can't speak fully for the High Commissioner for Refugees, but I can tell you, and I have no doubt, that his office engages with all member states that requires attention. Let me go to the screen first. Mushfiq?
For the Secretary General for the letter you just mentioned and offering support during this critical period as the country moves towards stability. Has the Secretary General also called for justice for those responsible for the deaths of 819 people and the injury of 25,000 others, mostly from gunshot wounds under the shoot on site orders by dictator Hasina?
Yes, we've been speaking about accountability since the beginning of this particular crisis. There will need to be accountability for the violence, for the loss of life, and for all violations of human and political rights. Deji.
Thank you.
Quick question also on Kursk region. Does the Secretary General feel disappointed that multiple Russian officials says there would be no peace talk if the offensive continues in Kursk?
Look, what we want to see is an end to this conflict that has gone on for far too long, in line with General Assembly resolutions, with the territorial integrity of Ukraine and international law.
Question on Venezuela. Did the UN say anything about the results of the July 28th?
Yes, there was, I think both you and I were on leave last week, but I would encourage both of us to read the transcript from last week.
But my question
Yeah.
does the UN support Maduro's declaration that he won the election?
It's not for us to support a claim to winning or not winning an election. I would refer you back to what we said when the results came in. Okay, thank you. Let's go to the screen. Imran, are you on? Mr. Riza? If we could plug in a guest. There we go. Hi, we see you. Hopefully you hear us. As mentioned, we're delighted to be joined by Imran Riza, our resident and humanitarian coordinator for Lebanon. Mr. Riza is here to brief you on the very challenging humanitarian situation in Lebanon, but also just to note that obviously Lebanon for the UN has a political file, which is being handled by our special coordinator in Lebanon, has a peacekeeping file, in which UNIFIL and our peacekeeping colleagues are in the lead. But Mr. Riza is here to talk to you about the humanitarian end of the situation. So Imran, please welcome, and you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Steph. Very pleased to join you today to update on the humanitarian situation in Lebanon. And I also actually share my impressions from a mission to southern Lebanon yesterday, which we undertook to mark World Humanitarian Day. Some of you in the room might recall that I was last with you in person in New York on the 5th of October last year. And at that point, I was talking to you about the needs in Lebanon and how Lebanon was pretty much off the radar in terms of attention and focus. Look at where we are today. It has unfortunately changed in a very negative manner. Over the past 3 weeks, tensions have been at their highest peak. The urgency of de-escalating tensions cannot be overstated. As the Secretary General has said, all efforts should lead to a return to calm across the blue line. 10 months on, nearly 200,000 people have been displaced by the exchange of fire across the blue line, including more than 110,000 people in Lebanon. Nearly 150,000 people remain within 10 kilometers of the blue line in areas of South Lebanon that are impacted daily by shelling and airstrikes. At least 130 civilians have been killed in Lebanon, including the 10 Syrian nationals this past weekend. 21 paramedics and at least 3 journalists have also been killed. Yesterday, to commemorate World Humanitarian Day, I traveled to Heberia in South Lebanon, to the site of a relief center where 7 paramedics were killed in a March airstrike. As you can imagine, it was quite emotional discussing with the mothers of these 7. We keep repeating the message. More needs to be done to end these hostilities, to find a diplomatic political solution, and immediately and continuously to protect civilians and humanitarian workers. I'm here today to speak of the humanitarian situation, our challenges, our needs. And while civilians are, of course, impacted on both sides, I will be speaking of the situation in Lebanon, where I am the humanitarian coordinator. As I briefed you last time, Lebanon was already facing a grim situation of protracted political, financial, socioeconomic crisis before October last year. Now, in 2024, those in need have reached 3.7 million people. This includes crisis-affected Lebanese, Syrians, Palestinians, other migrants. The conflict has further eroded the capacity of the state to tackle political, economic, and security challenges and to provide basic services to the population. In Heberia, as in other communities that I've visited over the past 10 months, I have seen and heard the distress of those remaining and those displaced. People's livelihoods have been devastated, their access to water, electricity, and healthcare has been affected, Children and parents are suffering psychological trauma. Some students are able to access education only online, most not at all. In this volatile and complex operating environment, the humanitarian community in Lebanon is responding to the needs of the displaced, as well as those remaining in frontline areas, despite the insecurity, despite the access challenges, and the lack of funding. Our annual appeal for assistance for all of Lebanon is, at this point in August, only 25% funded. Nonetheless, we have managed to reach 1 million people with assistance and support so far this year, including at least 180,000 people affected by the conflict in South Lebanon. We continue to do our best to improve our ability to reach people in need, strengthening our coordination, prioritizing our efforts to target the most vulnerable, negotiating access for assessments and distributions, but we need more resources and funding. As a humanitarian country team, we need $110 million to finance the ongoing response for up to 290,000 conflict-affected people in Lebanon. That's the estimate that we have from now, from August through the end of the year. Despite the challenges they are facing, I would like to recognize and commend the government leadership on coordinating preparedness and response plans. An important meeting was convened by the relevant national authorities on the 7th of August, bringing together government, humanitarian partners, and also the private sector. As agreed then, should there be a further escalation, we will need even more. In terms of preparedness, right now we are calling for an additional $36.4 million to pre-position food, water, medicines, and non-food items such as hygiene kits and shelter materials for immediate use in case of escalation. I'll close by just saying I think the obvious. A full-scale war in Lebanon would be devastating. We desperately need success on the political, diplomatic front. I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Imran. We'll go to Edie.
Thank you very much on behalf of the United Nations Correspondents Association. My name is Edith Lederer from the Associated Press. Before I ask my question, could you tell us how much the humanitarian appeal is? I know you said it was 25% funded, but what is the appeal? And then you said you're now asking for another $34 million in addition, and I want you to just clarify that.
Okay, it's just it's 2.72 billion with the overall appeal that is there for all our work in Lebanon on the humanitarian and stabilization side. We are asking, in addition to that, for $36.4 million, which would be for preparedness, which would be for pre-positioning essential supplies, because we do worry about the situation escalating. It's the prudent thing to do, given the experiences that we had in 2006, when it was very difficult to move around.
You said at the end that a full-scale war would be devastating. What is your assessment of the situation now? We hear that it's been escalating, and do you see people on the ground making preparations also? Thank you.
We've been in this situation for 10 months. We've had certain periods that have been extremely escalatory. There have been others where we've just seen a continuation of this so-called controlled exchange that's been happening. I think the last few weeks have been extremely alarming. Throughout, we have been making contingency plans and trying to prepare. There is, I think, a very, very high degree anxiety, of uncertainty. Certainly, a few weeks ago, we saw the sort of accelerated departure of many people that were here for the summer. So, I mean, I don't have a crystal ball on this. What we need to do is prepare for a continuation of what we've been dealing with for the last 10 months, but we also need to prepare should it go to a much higher level of escalation, which, of course, would be devastating.
Thank you. Ephraim?
Thank you so much. I have a couple of short questions. The 3.7 million people who are affected so far, does that include the Syrian and other refugees in the country, or are we talking about just Lebanese here?
No, that does include everyone. It includes Palestine refugees. It includes what the estimate that we're using these days is 1.5 million Syrians that are there.
Yeah.
And of course, a small number of migrants as well.
Yes, and the $36 million that you need to pre-position the essentials, should a scenario similar to the 2006 when Israel imposed the complete siege on the country, how long would that be enough for those essentials? Like, how many months would they last?
What we're doing now is trying to make sure that we have enough to cover the first 2 to 4 weeks if we see a very rapid escalation happening. We would obviously need much, much more than that, and it would be a completely different scale of response at that point.
And the 130,000 southern citizens who are fleeing the south, where are they going, and what do we know about their situation in other areas right now?
At the moment, it's a little over 110,000, and many of them have gone to different communities, people that they know, host families and others within the South, and many have gone actually beyond the South as well. So when we talk about pre-positioning and talk about being prepared, the response is happening very much in the South, but we need to be prepared in other regions as well. Should the displacement continue to increase in some of these other regions.
And one final one, we've read that what the country has now in terms of food and humanitarian aid would last only for 5 months, and in terms of fuel, only for 5 weeks. Is that still accurate? We're reading reports on that in the press.
I don't have the last figures on that, but we have been seeing, I mean, it is a matter of just a few months on that. And as you may have seen in the media, well, amongst yourselves also, that we were without electricity, any government provided electricity for the last couple of days here.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. Imran, you're off the hook. It's a slow August day, so thank you very much for coming, and we hope to hear from you again soon. And for those of you in the room, we have Monica Grayley briefing you now. Thank you. Thank you, Imran.
Okay, thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much, Steph, and welcome back. I have 3 notes for you, and we will live here. Starting on Thursday, 22nd of August, President Francis will welcome 2 students from New York City Public Schools Global Leaders Academy program to become PGA for a day. By shadowing Mr. Francis' daily routine, the students will participate in meetings, discussions, and strategy sessions, and will receive a comprehensive understanding of the UN General Assembly's work. The exercise, PGA for a Day, aims to be a transformative and enriching experience for the 2 New York-based students. Under President Francis' mentorship, the students will gain valuable insights into the responsibilities of global leadership and the challenges of diplomacy. This opportunity offers a unique, in-depth look at the workings of one of the world's leading diplomatic forums. One of the students, Mr. Eric Ponomarev, 16 years old, is from Fort Hamilton High School in Brooklyn, and the other student, Ms. Fariha Akhter, 15 years old, attends the Bronx Center for Science and Mathematics in the Bronx. We will post more information as the daily progresses on Thursday across the PGA's social media channels and also on his YouTube channel. You know by now, www.youtube.com/@UNPGA78. PJ Dennis Francis has sent a letter to chairs of the regional groups extending a deadline until the end of today on nominations of co-chairs to heads of state or government for the interactive dialogues to be held in parallel to the plenary segment of the Summit of the Future. Mr. Francis's correspondence follows his letter on 26th of July, calling for the nominations which should be made through respective regional groups. And these interactive dialogues will be held on 22nd and 23rd of September for the entire day. Interactive Dialogue 1 on 22nd of September in the morning, 10 a.m. We will discuss transforming global governance and turbocharging the implementation of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Interactive Dialogue 2 will take place on the same day in the afternoon at 3 o'clock, and will be on enhancing multilateralism for international peace and security. On 23rd of September, 2 interactive dialogues, 3 and 4. The first one about a common digital future, strengthening inclusive innovation and cooperation as well to bridge the digital divides. And the last one, starting at 3 p.m., will be about the future starts now, enhancing global system for current and future generations. Each dialogue will be co-chaired by the 2 heads of state or government to be nominated through this exercise and their respective regional groups with the regard to geographical balance and gender parity. And last but not least, the president of the GA, Mr. Dennis Francis, will hold a press conference on Monday, 9th of September, here at this very press briefing room. It will start at 11 o'clock. You are all invited. And it will be his last meeting with you as president of the current session. The PJ will answer your questions, and of course, we will start with very short remarks, and that will be done on the 9th of September. So this is everything we have for today. This is fine. You are excused. Okay. Anyone has anything else here? Any questions? If not, on the screen either, I would say, no, you have a question. I thought you were signaling to me that you needed to go. That's okay. My bad glasses. Go ahead.
No, I was just asking if it's 5th of December. I missed September.
It's lovely to see you. It's the 9th of September.
9th of September.
11 a.m., okay?
Yes. And I wanted to ask you, how hopeful is the PGA that this year he's going to see some of the world's most important leaders attend the UNGA session in September? We saw that there was a huge absence last year from the French president, the British prime minister, etc. What's his...
Thank you. No, thank you for these questions. In fact, there is a provisional list already on the internet, and many heads of state and government are confirmed. We have so far over 130 names confirmed to come. So the PGA is hopeful that this will be a very productive high-level week. Of course, we'll be dealing with very important and crucial events, including, of course, the Summit of the Future and other high-level events in this house. So the office is working hard to make this high-level week a very successful one, but also all the high-level meetings. So he remains hopeful, yeah, and optimistic. Okay, good. I see you tomorrow. Thank you very much. Thank you.